Welcome to Knife Chats. If you like what you see, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, share it with friends, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Thank you. As you may know, I was asked to show off all my Rough Rider knives, and I've got way too many to show off in just one single video. So what I'm doing is I'm doing them by series or by pattern, something like that. In this case, what I'm doing is I'm doing all of my Rough Rider knives that are in Tortoiseshell. Now, the tortoiseshell handles are not an actual series, it's just the material that they used. It's kind of like the white smooth bone handles. Not really a series. They didn't call it a white smooth bone series or anything. They just offered them in that kind of handle material. Now you're seeing more of the knives actually in certain handle materials being listed as a series. That wasn't the case originally. And the tortoiseshell knives came in a variety of boxes, from the your basic old brown box to the denim blue boxes, and then when they came out with them again, they came out in another color of box. So the box really had nothing to do with a series or anything. In fact, there's only one tortoiseshell handled knife I have that came in a series, and that series was not the tortoiseshell series. And I'll get to that when I get to that particular knife. Okay, and with that said, let's move on to the knives. I'm going to pretty much go through these kind of quickly because I've got about 18 or 19 that I want to look at, plus a few others that are also in tortoiseshell but are not Rough Rider. So the ones that are pretty much a common knife that you see quite often, I'm not going to dwell on very long. For instance, this is your tiny toothpick. It looks pretty nice. It's got the round shield. We'll talk about the round shield in a little bit. But it's basically your 3-inch toothpick with a 2-inch blade, so 5 inches overall. And then the lady's leg knife. This is the small lady's leg knife. You can use this as a bottle opener. Not the world's greatest bottle opener sometimes, but also I think this is like 3¼ inches long, maybe something like that, with about a 2-inch blade also, but a much more substantial blade. I don't know why people like these, but as long as we got them both here, I'll talk about them. You usually see the tortoiseshell knives in either a round horseshoe shield or the what they call the bow tie Rough Rider shield. Those are the two shields you most commonly see on them. This is the first time around when they first released the knives, and this is the second time they came out. So if you're seeing ones with a round shield, it's the older original release. If you're seeing it with the bow tie shield, I believe it's the second release of the knives. I don't know if they're going to do a third release or not, but the older ones will have the round horseshoe shield. Same knives, no real difference, only that it was released at a different time, so you'll find it in a different type of box. And then we have the peanut, 2 7/8 inches long, so you have your clip blade on this side, and then on the opposite side you have a pen blade. And in the back here, what looks sort of like a Barlow is called a mini trapper. And I think this one might actually be one of those knives that you don't see in many other areas of Rough Rider knives, other than the only place I've seen it is in Tortoiseshell. I'm sure it's been in other places, but I just haven't seen it yet. And I picked it up because I haven't got the Barlow and Tortoiseshell. But it is a pretty cool little knife. You can see it looks like a cross between a Barlow and a Trapper. If you notice, you got the little bump there, the little swell right there that you see on a Trapper handle, but you definitely have a bolster up here that looks like a bolster you would find on a Barlow, and it is a bare head end like you would find on most Barlows. Blade options on it are definitely those of a Trapper, so you have a small little clip blade here and a small spay blade here. So it's a pretty cool knife for a Trapper. I kind of like it. Typical of any of these knives in the series: stainless steel back springs, brass liners and spacers, brass pins, and obviously a tortoiseshell handle. And the brown and the black coloring here is translucent, so what you're seeing behind there is the brass liners that are showing through the translucent brown material. Now up front is probably my favorite of these small tortoiseshell knives I've got, and that is the Butterbean, or the mini Canoe. And I really do like the little mini canoes. A lot of people like these. 2 3/4 inches long. And this one has some really nice coloring to it. Should wipe off this back a bit. You can actually polish this and make it even look better. Just by getting it with a little like furniture polish or glass cleaner, and you can actually polish up the tortoiseshell and make it shine really nice. I do that occasionally. I should have done that before I did this video. Newer version of the Butterbean. You can tell by the butterfly. I'm sorry, the bow tie shield here. But it is just a shrunk down canoe. So you have what should be a spear blade, but it's about the size of a pen blade, and then a second pen blade over here. And what I like about them is, even though it is a match striker pull, it is it doesn't have it doesn't fan out. It's a straight line of a match striker pull, and that looks a whole lot better than the ones that are like that, especially on a knife like this. See the difference between those pulls? I like the one on the Canoe better than on the Peanut. All right, I'm going to clear away the little guys and bring in the ones that are a two-blade tortoiseshell knives. Okay, as long as we end it with the mini Canoe, let's start with the standard Canoe, which is 3 5/8 of an inches, and you'll see that it is basically the same knife. Except this one has the round horseshoe shield. You see the larger spear blade and the pen blade, and this is what I was talking about. So there's the pen blade on your Canoe, and here's the spear master blade on your mini Canoe. Notice it's the same size almost as the pen blade on your standard Canoe. So it's interesting that they call this a spear blade here, but it's really just 2 pin blades on this one. But a lot of people love Canoes, and they are a great knife to love. Especially when you got it in tortoiseshell. I'm going to put these two over here, kind of in view still. Let's move on to the next one up. One of the few muskrats I have, and that is one in the tortoiseshell line. And it's your standard muskrat, nothing fancy about it. Your 2 muskrat blades on equal ends. It's a 4-inch knife, 4 1/8 inch long knife, something like that, with 2 nice California or Turkish clip blades. And then got the doctor's knife here, which I've shown in the past. Obviously a newer version, you can tell by the bow tie shield. And this one has some really nice tortoise shell on it. All of them will have a ringed nickel silver bolsters. And the doctor's knife has your long spear blade, and it has the secondary pin blade. Like I said, I prefer them with a spatula. I know a lot of people prefer the ones that have a secondary pin blade, pill crusher in there. But I went ahead and picked this one up simply because it was in the tortoiseshell line, even though I would have preferred it with a spatula. And it was one of those things that's why I probably did not pick it up the first time around. But I am glad I have it. And finally, in 2 blades, is my Copperhead. And I really do like this Copperhead. The tortoiseshell doesn't look as good as it does in some of these other ones, and that's one of the things you will see is that the tortoiseshell is going to look different from knife to knife. But what I do like about the Copperhead is the blade choices you have on here. You got the clip blade in the back side, and then up front you have the very long Turkish blade or Skinner blade in the front there. And because of the Copperhead bolster, you don't have that annoying portion of the blade sticking up there, because it's like half a canoe with both blades on one end. And I do like the Copperheads. Alright, there we have the 2 blades out of the way. Let's move on to my 3 blade ones. Okay, right up front we start off with the sow belly, and this was the second of the tortoiseshell knives that I picked up. The first we'll get to when I show the single bladed knives, the single bladed large pattern knives. But I definitely picked up the sow belly. I love the sow belly as a Stockman. It's a really good one. I have another Stockman here too that's pretty cool. But this was the sow belly Stockman in my tortoiseshell. And you got the nice clip blade there. Pretty decent sheep foot blade here. And then on the opposite end, you have the spay blade. And I do like the angle that you get on the spay blade when you're got this knife in here, or when you got it in hand. That shape really does help out. And the nice thing about it is, for the most part, this side is kind of smooth. You do have a little bit of a catch right there on the sow belly, but it's not too bad, so you don't really catch it in too much of anything. Next up is the Carpenter's Whittler they have, and this is a nice swell center Whittler or Humpback Whittler. And you notice it does have the split back spring, which is why you have that little bit of a gap right there, but that's because you have this spacer in the middle, which is at an angle to keep those blades apart. And then you have the 3-blade Whittler going on here. The main blade is a wonderful little clip blade, and if you notice, you've got a nice stiff spine on here because it's like a saber grind going on there, and good direction going on with that too. So you can really choke up on that blade and really do some justice to your wood. And then you have the other 2 blades back here, a small clip blade, and then a small pin blade for your cutting needs and everything. So there's your Carpenter's Whittler or Humpback Whittler in the tortoiseshell. And next up is a knife you don't see in too many places in the Rough Rider lineup, and that is their reverse Stockman. Again, it just kind of looks strange at the shape of it, the serpentine handle and everything. And it's mainly because the blades are set up in reverse, like the long pull on here again. You've got, notice that too, a half stop going on with the the lockup on the blade. So you've got a clip blade down here, and then on the back side you have the sheep foot here. Actually, it's more like a coping blade, but that's your sheep foot blade there. And then your spade blade. So instead of having these the sheep foot at the top here, you have the spade blade up by the clip blade, and it's a smaller spade blade. Again, with the half stops going on, and you have a really nice long sheep foot blade on the opposite end. And like I said, it's really more of a coping blade, so this is really an interesting pattern that they have going on. And it's known as a reverse Stockman, and it isn't something that Rough Ryder created. There were reverse Stockmans before Rough Ryder, but it's an old pattern that they brought back, and it's pretty cool. And then got an honorable mention back here, which is actually a 4-blade Congress. Now this Congress is not a typical Congress. For one thing, its size. It's smaller than most Congress knives. But it wasn't listed as a mini Congress or anything like that, and it really isn't a mini. It's just smaller than normal. And also the blade options are a little bit different. Now, unfortunately, I do not have a lot of Rough Ryder Congress knives. It's not a pattern that I've collected in Rough Ryders. So I'll have to show you another one. And so I will break out this old case Congress, and you can see that the Rough Ryder one here is smaller. This is smaller than your typical Rough Ryder also. And this is the blade options that you normally will find on a Congress. Well, this one's even a little bit different than normal. But what you have is a coping blade over on one side and a sheep foot blade on the opposite side. Those are the two front blades, a coping and a sheep foot. And then the back blades tend to be a pin blade. This one is well used and well worn. And then a secondary blade back here would normally be another sheep foot blade. This one has been used quite a bit, and it might have started off as a pin blade or a spear blade. I'm not sure, but because of how old it is. But that's your typical Congress knife, or you'll also see them like so with larger blades on it. But still, the blade choices are about the same. You have two sheep foot blades, a pin blade, and a coping blade. This knife is not set up like that. What you have up front are two opposing pin blades. Those are the two front blades, and yes, there are half stops on both of these blades. So the knife has wonderful half stops going on for it, so it's a really well made knife. It also has a bar shield instead of a horseshoe shield or the bow tie shield. And then the back blades, that's where you find your coping blade. They still have a coping blade. But then the other blade you have on here is your sheep foot blade. So it's only got one sheep foot blade. And what they have done is, I guess because of the size of the knife, is they swapped out one of the sheep foot blades, this one here, for a pin blade. Kind of a novel idea, and like I said, it's not a big knife. It typically a Congress comes in at somewhere around 3.5 inches or so. Well, this one comes in right at 3 inches long, just a little bit over 3 inches long, maybe 3 1/8 of an inch. Typically a Congress is about 3.5 inches, so it's kind of an odd one for it, but it's also kind of cool. And the only place I have seen it is in the Tortoiseshell line. It might be somewhere else, but I don't know. Let's move on to the large knives. Now, you've probably seen this one before on more than one occasion, and that is my my locking sodbuster or my locking work knife by Rough Ryder. And this was the very first tortoiseshell knife I picked up, and this is the one that convinced me to go ahead and pick up other ones. And it is really just a beautiful knife. It's not small at all. We mentioned that before. That's why it's here. Comes in at like 4 5/8 of an inches long closed, and you've got the liner lock there to lock this thing up when you open the blade, and definitely a big one, and actually very comfortable to hold and handle, and you've got a very positive lock going on with it. So there's my locking sod buster, and next up is the straight razor. And this one really has some good color going on, but really the handle is just the plastic portion that is tortoiseshell. And then you've got the blade going on here. I've shown this before too. And you see nice and easy, does it every time. And then the women's legs going on and Rough Ryder there. And this, just closes by gravity. It's a friction knife. And this is the one that I was talking about that came in a box that was part of a series, and that was the collector's edition straight razors. I think they had 4 different straight razors in the series, and tortoiseshell was one of them. I did not care to pick up straight razors, but because this was tortoiseshell, I wanted the straight razor for my tortoiseshell collection. And before I focus on this one, let's just grab the one that's hiding in the back here, and that's the other lady's leg, which is in tortoiseshell. And why I bought it, I don't know, but I did. Probably because it was in tortoiseshell. Not happy with it. Still don't like them. I think these are some of the ugliest knives around. Even in tortoiseshell, they're ugly. But I wanted it for the collection. There's a few other tortoiseshell knives I want for the collection that I'm still looking for, but haven't found yet. But that brings us to this one, which is probably the largest one I have in the collection, and that is the Coke bottle and tortoiseshell. Not my favorite version of a Coke bottle knife, but one that makes the most sense and one that is very popular among collectors, and that is the one that has the Copperhead top on a Coke bottle. And it does make a lot of sense when you consider you can use the top there as protection to stop your hand from sliding up onto the blade and such. Nice saber grind going on the blade, and definitely a big knife. 5 1/4 inches long closed with a 4-inch blade, so it comes out right at 9 inches long, maybe a little bit more open. And it's a Coke bottle, and not a pattern you see very often in Rough Ryder. They had it in about 4 or 5 series, but they kind of just disappeared, and they don't seem to be making them very often anymore. Unfortunate. I really like the Coke bottle, but yeah, about the only place you can find it right now is in the tortoiseshell lineup, and even that is becoming more and more scarce because I got a feeling that once it's gone, it's gone. Any case, let's show a few other ones, and then I'll break out my favorites in this in the tortoiseshell for a very quick wrap up. So now I've often talked about how this is the very first tortoiseshell that I picked up in Rough Ryder, but the very first tortoiseshell I picked up was right here, actually, the Marvel's 5-inch toothpick, and very reminiscent of any of the Rough Ryder 5-inch toothpicks. But I picked this up because it was in tortoiseshell, and Rough Ryder did not offer a tortoiseshell toothpick. But yeah, just typical 5-inch toothpick, 4-inch blade, 5-inch handle, triple ring bolsters, pretty cool knife, and same quality that you find in a Rough Ryder. And then I've got 2 other Marvel's knives here. And they're both Whittlers, even though this one at first glance looks like a Congress. It's actually a Congress Whittler, and it's pretty cool. You've got a Spear Master blade going on with it. It feels nice in the hand. The Congress handle is actually very comfortable when you're cutting things because of the way that shape is, because it is kind of a sway back. And the other two blades on this, and if you notice, again, you've got a split back going on with this Congress because it's a Whittler. You've got a pin blade over here and a sheepfoot blade. And nice looking tortoiseshell bone or tortoiseshell acrylic going on with it. The marbles bar shield on these. Both of these have a marbles bar shield. This one has more of an oval. And this is the marbles sleeve board Whittler, again with the split back, brass liners and everything else. And you've got a really big ol' honkin' spear blade going on here with a nice wedge going on at the top too. This one does rock around. It doesn't have a half stop. And then the secondary blades you have on there is you have a pin blade with a half stop and another pin blade. Very traditional sleeve board Whittler by Marbles. And those are my three Marbles tortoiseshell knives. And the only other tortoiseshell knife I have is right here, the Winchester barn door hinge toothpick, made in 1095 carbon steel. And that's it for all of my tortoiseshell knives. I do have one honorable mention, I guess. It's not truly tortoiseshell, but I throw it in with the box, and you see that it is definitely not the same because you've got blues and purples going on with it. But for me, it's like close enough, I guess, and I have no other place to keep it, and that is the toad sticker. And so I throw it in with the tortoiseshell collection, even though it's not a true tortoiseshell. Let's take a look at my top 5 Rough Ryder tortoiseshell knives. Okay, as interesting and as unique as this one is for a Congress, it is not one of my top 5 for the Rough Ryder tortoiseshell knives. The first up comes in with the reverse Stockman. I just like the way the blades look, and I like the way it operates. I like the half stops going on with it. I like the larger sheepfoot blade going on with it here. All in all, I just like the reverse Stockman. I like the concept behind it, and I also just like the way the blade options work and everything. Next up is the Whittler, the Humpback Whittler. I don't know, I just like it. I like the coloring on this one too. It looks really good, and I like the handle of a Humpback Whittler like this. The split back springs, the nice heavier saber ground blade here going on, and then the choices of the clip blade here and the pin blade here. I've actually thought about picking up another one of these and turning one of the pin blades into a turning the pin blade into a coping blade, and I might just do that because I do like this knife, but I would like the pin blade to be a coping blade. But still, I really like that one. And next up is the little butterbean. I like the mini canoes, and this one is really nicely done, and I like the long pull going on with it. I think the blades open well, and it's just a wonderful little knife to just drop in your pocket and pull out. It's non-threatening and everything else, so I really like the butterbean canoe. And this one, the locking sod buster or locking work knife, probably remains my favorite of all the Rough Ryder tortoiseshell knives. I just like this knife. It's really good. I like their locking sod busters. They make them really well, and they look really good. And this one looks especially nice with the bird's eye rivet and the tortoiseshell. It just looks really good, and it's just extremely well made. I'm just very happy with it. And that brings us to the last of them, and that's Probably number 2 or 3 on the list. This probably is 2. This might be number 3 on the list. The large Coke bottle. I just like Coke bottle knives, so this is one that I'm happy to have. Do wish it was a more standardized Coke bottle with the straight top instead of the Copperhead top, but still a pretty cool knife. And the Copperhead top does make a lot of sense when you consider that it covers the little notch on the blade there. And definitely a big one, and one you just don't see enough of in the Rough Rider lineup. They're Coke bottle knives. So there's my the top 5 of my tortoiseshell knives by Rough Rider. Oh, obviously, if they had a tortoiseshell toothpick or a tortoiseshell scout knife, 2 of these knives would be gone right away.
Thank you for visiting Knife Chats. I hope you enjoyed your time here. If you did, please give us a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel and ringing that notification bell so that you will be notified when the next episode of Knife Chats is up online. Thanks again. See you soon.